how to overcome negative talk to become more organized. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. We're in our brand new myorganized.life studio, which is our new website, our consumer website. So they're being involved in this podcast as part of SMED as well. And today we're going to be positive in what we're going to talk about, because oftentimes we get brought down by negative talk. So we're going to see how the relationship of negative talk kind of relates to how organized you can be. And we're going to bring on one of our original podcast all-stars, Janine Sarna-Jones. How are you doing, Janine?
I'm great. How are you?
Well, awesome. It's been a while since we've talked, but we saw you at the NAPO conference, the National Association of Professional Organizers, and we've got you back on for what I think is a dynamic topic about negative talk and how it affects us. Not only how it affects us, but how it affects others when we communicate with them. So let's kind of set the table here a little bit. And what are we going to talk about?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think there's the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we talk to the people that, you know, I would say are in our team or within our community, and then the way we talk to the world. All of those three different areas, we really do have an effect, a big effect on ourselves and the people around us in the way that we talk about ourselves and or our projects or our goals or our desires. All of that stuff is really affected by the way that you talk.
Well, yeah, and specifically in this podcast, we're going to talk about organizing, of course, you know, keeping you organized. And you're a professional organizer, and you go out and do client meetings. And give us an example of how that might work at a client meeting, how negative talk could really affect what you do.
Well, I have a client who she is really great. You know, she's very productive at work, but she hired me to kind of help her be more productive. And the long and short of it is, I noticed that she's really clear and open and forgiving of other people in the way that they talk to her, but she isn't so forgiving of herself in the same way. So, and I do think it affects her productivity, because she'll say things that it'll slip, you know, she'll say things like, oh, that was so stupid when I did that. Or, and we do this all the time. I mean, I know that I have.
Oh,
I'm sure
yes.
you have too. But there are times when you feel like you could have done something better. And instead of analyzing what it was that could have gone better, you then instead berate yourself, which is kind of completely pointless, and it wastes time. So, you know, the time that you're taking to berate yourself is a huge time suck. And then, but you're also not improving upon the process that you were working on, or that the project that you were working on, maybe it could have been done better. So the next time you do it, you could correct it if you actually analyze it from a more dispassionate place, not from this like, oh, I suck place.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that I think we all deal with that, and I'm wondering why we do. I know we're not going to do philosophy or psychology here, but what do you think? Why do we do this?
Well, I think it's that we all have these little gremlins, and it maybe, you know, who knows? I mean, if you talk about psychology, it's probably the voice, you know, from when you were little, and the parents or whatever it is, or your peers. It could be anything. Somebody always being critical and watching you with a critical eye. But I think it's a human condition. And, you know, everyone that I have ever met suffers from it, except for the people who seem to, you know, blithely go through life without any care, which I only know a couple, and they seem to be very, I don't know, they seem to meditate a lot, those people, and they live a life of a mindful life. So I would say I'm not quite sure why we have this problem, but I do know that it exists. And so many of my amazing, wonderful, you know, incredible clients who I just look at with awe, the things they say about themselves really astound me, because I think that part of my job is to champion them. And then, but my goal is to get them to a place where they can champion themselves and feel like they've really can look back and see all the work that they've done that is, amazing. Right. So one of the things that I love to do is when I'm working with somebody and we're doing work together, they will often say, oh my gosh, I couldn't have done this without you. Even though they were the one that made all the decisions, we helped develop a system that worked around the way that they think and operate and all of that, but they don't see it as something that they do themselves. But when I do a job that's a virtual organizing, where I'm literally talking to somebody through a screen and they are actually doing all of the work themselves, it's so much easier for me to say, look, you are the champion in this particular case. Like maybe, I helped you, but you are the champion because you did it. Right.
So that's part of the process would be, taking and, encouraging people, I guess. What are some of those tactics to help people who do that?
Well, I think the first number one thing is to notice. If you can help somebody notice the way that they're talking to themselves, that is a big, big piece of the puzzle. Because the noticing, because I always ask my clients, especially during a session, when they start to talk to themselves that way, I say, okay, put a pin in that. Did you just hear the way that you were talking to yourself? And then they say, oh, yes, I did, or that they're not quite clear. I'll reiterate what I just heard them say to themselves. Mm-hmm. And then the next piece of that is like, okay, I want you to notice the way that you talk to yourself when we're not together. Because right now I'm going to be this proxy, this person who literally will help you notice. And then I want you to practice noticing on your own. And then the mindfulness piece starts to build. If you notice, I just said something mean to myself today, oh, Janine's going to be so proud because I noticed that I was saying something. But the second piece of it is once you notice, is to reframe. So let's see, most recently, maybe this week, I was with a client who said something about someone else. And it was like a negative comment about this person, the way this person is. And I said, well, perhaps this person is actually just trying to figure out a way to establish boundaries. Maybe that's what's happening. And that's why she comes off as kind of strident. And this person said, oh, I never would have thought of that. Yeah, it's possible. So noticing how you talk to other people or how they talk to you, that could be one place where you practice reframing. So I always assume that nobody, has anything against me. If somebody says something mean to me, I'm like, oh, wow, they really have a problem because it's definitely not me.
By the way, you are doing an incredible job on this podcast.
Thank you so much.
So maybe we can move into talking to others and how, this negative talk can affect other people when we talk like that.
Well, I do think that I really truly believe, like in email, in talking, in, texting, you need to be clear. Like get to the point, be clear. Don't have a lot of extraneous stuff because people can, misinterpret what you're saying. So I happen to be a very direct person. When I was younger, people said that I had no tact. and I would just say, I would, reframe that by saying, but I think I'm just very direct. Right. But I don't put a lot of fluff around the things that I say to people because it's pointless. But people know what it is that what I want. So when I communicate, I say, this is a problem. Can we fix it?
So are you consciously thinking about this when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that there's two different areas. When I notice them being critical to themselves, I try to be their champion. But if somebody is being critical to me, and that's only really happened a couple of times, I have to say I'm like very blessed. I have amazing clients who are, I mean, they're so yummy and so delicious. I just love them. But there have been a couple of times, I would have to say, where I've had clients that I did not love so much, but I would try to give them as much as I possibly could, and they would come back and be critical. And I don't take it personally because it's not about me, but what I would try to do is help them reframe what they were trying to say. Mm. And the one thing I do is that I don't attack when somebody's attacking me. I always take a deep breath before I speak. And that process, let's do it together. Let's take a deep breath. It really does something, I think, when you don't respond right away, because I don't want to live an amoeba life. I don't want to be an amoeba. I don't want to be stimulus response. I want to be thoughtful and cogent when I'm responding to something, especially if it makes me upset or if I feel like I'm starting to get upset. So that's one way of dealing with the people around you. And then in the community, when you're, outside of the community that you would consider your close circle of people, how you present yourself is a very big piece of that too.
Let's hold on to that, Doc, because I think I actually want to take a deep breath again. And we're going to take a little break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're going to talk more about that negative talk and how it affects all of us and our organization. We're with Janine Sarna-Jones, and we will be right back. Hey, Leanne, I'm going to take a quick little break. Do you have that door closed? Yeah. I'm just getting a little echo in my ears. Can you hear an echo there on your end?
I don't hear an echo.
Okay, so maybe it's just, do you hear it on the audio? So I'm wondering what we can do to, something is, okay, I'm just going to talk less because it's only when I talk. So anyway, okay, so let's get back into composure here.
Okay, is this making sense?
Yeah. Oh,
to you?
it's really good. Yeah, I just didn't want you to get to the third point. I wanted to kind of get into the into the next here. So yeah, it kind of comes and goes. So I really don't know what it is. It's just maybe I'm hearing those gremlins in my head or something. Yeah. All right. So here we go.
Okay.
We are back on Keeping You Organized, talking about how to overcome negative talk that affects us, not only in our relationships with others, but also our organization. And we're with Janine Sarna-Jones, organizeme-inc.com. And Janine, just kind of recapping what we talked about in the first part, we talked about how negative talk affects us personally. And then how it affects maybe others that we're talking one-on-one or in a small group situation. But we started to talk about this community concept and maybe the world at large. Can you relate negative talk, and how does it affect that, those at large?
Well, I tend to be a little crunchy granola. So I do believe that it's very important to put out positive feeling into the world. The universe looks out for you as long as you are, working at your best to be kind to the people around you. I mean, kindness is in short supply, especially these days during an election cycle.
Oh, yeah.
It's like unbelievable. I mean, some of the things that are being said. And I really do believe that effect, I have a funny story for you. This isn't really along the lines of organizing, but I was on, how everybody kind of, lives their life like this now with a smartphone and their heads are in this position. And so a big
Go or whatever, yeah.
Yes. So a big part of the world is completely, they don't see it because they're so in this triangle that's right in front of them, right? So I was on the subway not too long ago, and there was a guy standing next to me with a big backpack on, and he had his head down looking at his phone, and he bumped me several times, and it was annoying. I mean, there was plenty of room. He didn't have to bump me. So and he happened to get off at the same stop that I was getting off at, and he happened to be walking in the same direction that I was walking at, and he kept his head down the entire time looking at his phone. And there were other people coming toward us that had to kind of step out of his way because he was not engaged with the world, right? So he's communicating, I don't really care about the rest of the world. I only care about what's happening here in my triangle, right?
Right. Yeah. And
So
I think a whole generation's getting that rap too,
it's
right?
not just young people, I have to
Right.
tell you, it really isn't. So, those poor millennials.
Yeah.
So he was doing this. And as I was walking past him, I said, so you're just going to stay on your phone the whole time, right? Is that what you're going to do?
Did he
So that
grunt
everyone
back?
around you has to walk around you to avoid you? And it was so funny. Like, I live in New York City. So his first response was like, expletive, expletive, expletive. And I said, oh, no, no, we don't need to go there. I'm just noticing something that you may not have noticed, that everyone is walking around you because you're not fully present. That's all I wanted to point out to you. That's it. And he said, and I said, you bumped me several times on the subway because you were so engaged with your phone. And that was a little frustrating. So I just thought I would let you know. And you know what he said?
Oh,
I'm really
whatever.
sorry I bumped you.
Oh. At least he didn't say whatever.
That's true. But I didn't, like, I spoke to him with kindness. I didn't, like, I noticed, but I spoke to him with kindness. And I think that is the way, when we're communicating outside into the world, we are communicating about who we are on a constant basis. So if you go back to how you talk to yourself, like, I'm a dirty slob, that has ripple effects outside. I think, when you are with the community of people that, are supposed to care for you and love you and know you, and you say negative things about yourself, and they feel like, what are they supposed to do? Like, how do they help you see the things that make you who you are and make you wonderful? And then out in the world, if you speak to people with kindness, you get often, in my experience, and I live in New York, which is supposed to be this really mean city, but I often have lovely conversations with people that are, denizens of my town.
Right.
So,
Well, let's go back to the idea of organizing, and again, kind of maybe even retouch on what can we do to be better organized with this kind of more positive talk, or maybe even a small victories, whatever it is. How
well, I
can we
think
relate
that
that back to organizing?
victories is such a great part of it, because I think some of it is, if you champion the things that you do well, like, don't always, everybody, when you walk into a cluttered space, everybody looks at the whole thing and says, oh my God, how am I ever going to change this? It doesn't have to be that way. It's like, just I always tell people, work on this small space right here. And then when you do it, make sure you do a happy dance afterward, because doing that small space can be replicated throughout your life. So it could be anything from, when people are talking about, well, I'm always late. I have some people that I work with on productivity, and their issue is about being late and not meeting deadlines. For those people, it's like, let's start in a small way. Like, teaching them to count backwards, the amount of time that they actually need, the real time that they need to get themselves ready and prepared to get to someplace. That's a challenge. So to be organized and productive in that way, you make a happy dance. You have a happy dance every time you're on time or early for an appointment, that you acknowledge. It goes back to mindfulness. You acknowledge your victory.
Right. And maybe even have them say it every morning. I will be on time today. Say it out loud, right?
You could say that, but I don't want you to set you up for failure either. It's like, I will try to be on time, or I will make an effort. Those are the things that you really have to do, because in some cases, the train is late.
Right. You can't control everything. Well, we're just about out of time. I want to give you a chance to talk about your business. I know you do some virtual organizing and maybe some of your specialty areas, and more importantly, how people can get a hold of you.
Oh, well, I've got two sides of my business. One side is moving and relocation. I love moving people in, and we make their beds and unpack everything and organize it and put it away. And I love doing that. So if anybody's coming to New York or leaving New York, think of us. And the other side is the one-on-one productivity coaching. And I'm an Evernote certified consultant, so I also help people with apps and integrating them into their workflow. And I love doing that too. And those are the two halves of Organize
Awesome.
Me. And I can
Yes,
be
and
reached on my website, organizeme-inc.com is where you can read more about me, my team, and what we do in our business.
great. And all that's going to be in the show notes too. For those of you who maybe are listening and didn't quite get it, you can go to our show notes at smead.com/podcast. Get everything you need to know about this. But I want to say one more time, you did a fantastic job today.
Thank you.
Does that feel good? Now, come
Well,
on.
this is one of my. It feels wonderful.
Wait a minute.
Can you not see the beams of light? Because I can tell you are a fantastic interviewer, and I so appreciate.
I was looking for.
I so appreciate talking to you every time I get a chance to, and
Good.
I love Smead.
Okay, good. Well, now that we've got that down, I think it's time for us to go actually be productive and be positive and have a great rest of our day. So, Janine, thank you so much for joining us, and we will definitely have you back a little sooner this time. It's been a while since we've had you on, but it was great content. And
I've got long hair now. So.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Well, at least you have your hair, and that's good. And I still have mine. So
that's good.
Good. So, well, there you have it, folks. Use a little positive talk. Be aware of it. Most importantly, don't let those negative voices discourage you or help you from being organized, because definitely it's something you can do to take the right step to being organized. And the other step is to continue to listen to this or watch this podcast. So we will see you on the next episode of Keeping You Organized. Beautiful.